When you think about Battlefield as a franchise, it's safe to say that most of us think multiplayer, and rightfully so. I don't imagine there are many people that buy Battlefield for the single player campaign, and whilst I have to admit that the single player campaigns for BF3 and BF4 were not very good or memorable, I've got much higher hopes for BF1, and in this video I'm going to explain why. Let's just talk about how BF3 and BF4 went about their campaigns first of all, and see where they went wrong. In BF3 you get to play as 4 different characters. I challenge you to name them all. I imagine that you probably can't. There's an imminent nuclear attack and you've got to stop it, that's the gist of it. Overall it was very linear and you had a number of QuickTime events that were followed by some cinematic clips, and whilst it looked gorgeous it just didn't grip you and you had very little love for any of the characters in the game. It was a strong opening with the fault line mission, but after that it just fizzled out. BF4 was much of the same, just a lot more cinematic and pretty. Remember Wrecker? I do, but not because he was a great character, but because I heard his name so many goddamn times during the whole campaign. Wrecker this, Wrecker that, I'm gonna wrecker you if you don't shut your trap. I'm sure you've seen entire videos on YouTube with every time Wrecker's name was said, and trust me, they go on for a while. So the game's set in 2020, tensions between Russia and the US are at an all-time high, and a guy called Admiral Chang wants to blame the US for the assassination of the Chinese future leader to cause all-out war. You, of course, need to stop it. Now, what do both of these campaigns have in common? Firstly, they're made-up events, fictional stories with fictional wars with characters that for the most part are pretty throwaway and you never feel a real connection with. Compare that to something like Bad Company 2, another DICE game, which actually included a funny, tight-knit squad that played through the game with you, that quipped and joked around and made you laugh. It's a world apart. So whilst these games are based in reality, as much as they can be, you never really feel like you're actually in the middle of a real war. And that's the problem. Now of course, it's really hard to make an FPS game feel more immersive because by its nature, it's you shooting at multiple enemies over and over again, but then I remember some of the older World War games that I used to play, Call of Duty 2 for example, that's what you're seeing on the screen now, or Medal of Honor Allied Assault, back when both of these franchises were actually good, and I remember just how much I enjoyed them and how good they were, and I came to the conclusion that I think that I enjoyed them more because they were based on real world events. Bear with me a second, I know that Call of Duty 2 came out over 10 years ago, but when you're a kid in school, you learn about World War II quite a lot in history lessons, and you watch movies like Saving Private Ryan and Enemy at the Gates, TV series like Band of Brothers, and then when a video game comes along and you can experience all that and experience the Omaha Beach Offensive or the Battle of Stalingrad or El Alamein, and it adds a bit of excitement because it's something that you know actually happened and you've learnt a bit about it and now you're recreating it in a filtered down entertainment video game form. And that's one of the main reasons why I think Battlefield 1's campaign could potentially be very special and moving. BF1 has so many things that it can take inspiration from. Firstly, it has all the incredible battles of World War I that it can tap into. Real battles, real stories, and most importantly, real people that they can use to create an exciting story. We can already guess that real world characters like Lawrence of Arabia and his bodyguards will feature in the single player campaign, and so it stands to reason that we could see more characters based on real people. Will we see people like Jutland Jack, the 16-year-old boy? Will we see American Alvin York, or dare I say Adolf Hitler? He actually fought in World War I, and there's an unconfirmed story that says British soldier Henry Tandy spared his life on one occasion. Then of course we've got all the folk stories and myths, urban legends of World War I that can be tapped into, like the Attack of the Dead Men that I talked about recently, and even the heroics of the Harlem Hellfighters who we've guessed could also feature in the game. Take all of that real world narrative and you can really make a special campaign here, and most importantly, an emotional, moving one. World War I was a very sad time, and if there's something I don't feel when I play the stories from BF3 or BF4, it's any emotion at all. I'll just point and shoot and forget about everything else. I don't feel connected, it's just another FPS single player campaign. But when I remember playing the old Call of Duty campaigns that were set in World War II, I remember feeling the emotions of the battles and a connection to the soldiers because we all know of the hardship and sacrifice that these soldiers made during the Second World War and of course the First World War. And because of that, we will be going into BF1 with that in our subconscious, and I think that could really make a difference in building a connection with the characters. From what we've seen so far of the BF1 single player campaign in the trailers, it looks like DICE will possibly be tugging on the heartstrings, putting each character in danger and looking at their individual sacrifices during the war. The graphics are fantastic, it's cinematic, the music is great. Now it just needs that varied Battlefield gameplay in real world scenarios and characters who you feel a real connection to. A AAA, massive budget World War I single player campaign. It's something that's never been done before in video games, at least not that I can think of. This is new ground for the gaming industry. New stories to tell, new weapons to use, new equipment to experiment with, new characters. The Great War was a time of old meets new and rapidly evolving technology and tactics. It's incredibly interesting, and I'd love to see the developers play with all of that and create something compelling and fresh. Is this going to be the next Last of Us? Of course not. It's probably going to be 6 to 8 hours long, but short and sweet can sometimes leave as much of an impression. When I think of the BF1 campaign, I think that it could potentially hit a similar note to something like Band of Brothers. I know that's set in World War II though, but you know what I mean, that style. And we know that it will span across the globe and include multiple characters. I also think of scenes like the stranded tank scene from Fury, a fantastic scene, and it looks like DICE are taking inspiration from that in one of the clips from the trailers. So if you remade Band of Brothers but with a modern theme, would it have the same emotional connection? I honestly don't think so. There's something special and moving about the first two world wars that connects with our generation, and it's because of that and because of how incredibly cinematic the Frostbite engine is with its visuals and sound design that makes me think and hope that BF1's campaign has the potential to be really special with the correct execution. So there we have it guys, some speculation I wanted to put out there. What do you think? Is there potential here for a great single player game or not? Obviously the multiplayer should be the focus for DICE, but a strong single player campaign would be a fantastic addition to the franchise and add value to the product. Let me know your thoughts down below. Can they revive the glory days of Call of Duty and Medal of Honor? Also remember, if you fancy picking up one of my brand new t-shirts, the link is on the screen now and down in the description below. Very cool design and limited edition, so when they're gone for good. As always, thank you for watching guys, I hope you had a nice weekend. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, a thumbs down if you didn't, and I'll see you in the next one.